Welcome into Double Fries, No Slaw. TJ Pittenger, Richie Barnes here. May the 4th be with you. I'm not a big Star Wars guy, Richie, but since that's what, I know people get into that. So since some people are, I'll give them a little ode there. But Double Fries, No Slaw, here to talk all things FSU football. We finally have some news this week, Richie. We'll see how good or bad it is here in just a minute. But we do have some news. We thought this might be kind of a light week, but some big-time trending topics have come up on the timeline, and then some recruiting of the portal has finally happened too. We will talk about all that in just a moment. But how's your weekend been, man?
Good. Went to a Kentucky Derby party yesterday. Lost every single bet that I placed. I was all in on Sandman. I really was. I thought he was the guy, and then I forget the horse's name. It's one of those funky ones. But he was actually bred in Central Florida, so I put money on him, even though he was a very long shot. Everyone thought journalism was going to win, and obviously he came in second. But either way, it was still a very fun time at the party and a very entertaining race.
Yeah. I missed it. I missed the race. If you don't catch it right away, if it's like 2.5 minutes, right? Like, so you don't, you just miss it. So we had been talking about it for most of the day, and I was watching softball. I was watching baseball. Barcelona was on kind of in the afternoon. So I was watching some soccer. And we were outside swimming. We were in the pool, and we came inside. I showered the kids, came out. It was like 6:25, and I was like, "Oh, let me flip it on real quick." By then, it had already happened. So I found a replay on Twitter, and that was that. But yeah, I didn't even get a chance to watch it. But I mean, what I saw the replay. Seeing it 2 minutes later or 10 minutes later, not a huge deal, I suppose. But yeah, no, good weekend so far. We had a pretty chill day yesterday where we didn't do anything. We just hung out at the house, which was awesome, and went to church this morning. And I literally doing these at 1. Like, I literally walk in the door, go and fill up Diet Dr. Pepper, and then sit down and do this. So that's been the extent of the weekend so far. Let's get into things. Guthrie's presented by Double Fries and Salt, presented by Guthrie's. You can visit all 3 of their Tallahassee locations: 1818 West Tennessee, 2550 North Monroe, and 2870 Apalachee Parkway. We always appreciate them for their support. If you're going up for any postseason softball, which is going to happen soon, if you're going up for any baseball, big series finishing up right now against Clemson. They play UNC at home. I would assume they'll have a regional at home and then maybe a super regional as well. Make sure that you are stopping by Guthrie's and getting your box. Double Fries, No Slaw. Richie, first topic of the day. Florida State lands, I think, 5 transfer commits this week. If I'm missing anybody or we don't get to anybody, whatever. Like, this is not not necessarily the time for the all-out review and film breakdown of every single player. But we had wondered about some transfer portal movement. We had wondered where they would add guys, where they would try and improve the roster. I think that they've potentially improved the roster in probably 1 spot, maybe 2. But I think they've added a lot of depth. We can talk about each one of these guys here for just a sec. But the guy probably, we'll start with, the best news first. Gavin Sawchuk, running back from Oklahoma, originally a 4-star prospect. I don't know if Florida State fans will remember this or not, but he blew, he lit us up in that Cheez-It Bowl, right? He had 100 yards, had a touchdown, had a reception for 8 yards, played really well in that game against Florida State. Has had a good career, almost 1,000 yards on 208 carries. Like, he's got a lot of production. Battled with a kind of a nagging hamstring last year that was a big deal and bothered him an absolute ton. In talking with people at Oklahoma, seems to be fully healthy. Was battling out for RB1 spot there at OU until they got Jaden Ott, who is a bona fide, no doubt number 1 type guy. When he transferred in, Oklahoma realized they were going to lose one of the 2 guys battling for the starting spot. So this, to me, this is a good pickup for Florida State. I've never been incredibly impressed with Roydell. Hopefully he makes me eat those words and he has just a breakout year this year. But I've never been super impressed with Roydell as kind of your RB1. I think he's fine for a change of pace. I think that this is a really good pickup for Florida State. He should be, until maybe Cromwell is able to take over. I think he could be your number 1. If he was going to do it at Oklahoma, I think he's got a good chance to do it here at Florida State. And 2 years of eligibility left. I think that he has a really good shot to have a good career here at Florida State over these last couple of years.
Yeah, and ideally, when you hit the portal, you don't want to get someone who would be considered developmental. And I do not think that is the case at all here. You and I were both at that Cheez It Bowl here in Orlando. And yeah, he was extremely impressive. And, unfortunately, sometimes, even if you're a very good college player, with the transfer portal in this era, you could easily get recruited over by an elite running back, and that just happens. But that's not to say he can't be RB1 here at Florida State. Now, I'm not super down on our running back room. I'm not, by no means do I think they're, top 10, 15 in the country. But again, you're stacking depth, and this is talented depth, to your point, TJ, with production. And if he is as healthy as you're hearing, I think this is a very quality add. It's someone who can contribute day one, and ideally in the portal, that's what you want, is someone who can contribute day one, unless it's a rare case where it's a guy that has 3 years of eligibility left, or maybe 4 years, depending on how crazy the NCAA is these days. But I think he's someone that can come in. Gus Malzahn and Mike Norvell both want to run the football, so the more bodies, the better. And this is a quality body that they just picked up.
So next up, another Gavin. Both these happened today. We dropped a pre-record on Sawchuck where I went into a little bit more detail on him from my buddy Jay over at Unfair Sports, covers Oklahoma, also locks on Sooners. That is like live on not live, but that is available on the channel right now. Maybe check it out after this live video is done. But some really good information there, and a pickup that I'm really excited about. I think that he's going to end up being really good for Florida State. Picked up another Gavin today, a wide receiver from UNC. Back-to-back Gavins picked up is kind of interesting. Gavin Blackwell, a former four-star recruit from North Carolina in the 2021 class. Very limited production. I mean, if we're just being honest, a couple of receptions in 2021. He did have 18 receptions and a touchdown in 22. Had 7 receptions in 23. Had 4 receptions last year in 2024. He visited FSU on Thursday, and Florida State. It's been reported that and based on the kids visiting and guys they were targeting, it looked like they were looking for a kind of a wide receiver 3 replacement since Hakeem and Jalen are gone. I don't know that this is necessarily your wide receiver 3. It feels like you've added depth with this piece, but very limited production in 4 years. I mean, in 4 years, what's he? Well, 2 and 18 is 20. You got 31 receptions and doesn't have 500 yards, only 1 touchdown across 29 games. This one's a little bit puzzling to me. I would love, I think you're just looking for more production. And so, sure, I'd love to completely eat crow here and this kid go off for 700 yards and 8 touchdowns. But this is a little bit of a weird one to me. A kid that doesn't have much production, really wasn't able to do anything in 4 years at UNC. Hopefully he can turn that around and have a really good final season for Florida State. But the Sawchuck one, where I think you're getting a guy that's really, really talented, this one kind of makes me pause a little bit and wonder, all right, well, what are we seeing here in 4 years? He's not really been able to do much. Is this it's going to go one of two ways, Richie. It's going to be an absolute scouting gem of a performance by Mike Norvell to find a hidden talent, or we're going to look at it at the end of the year and say, yeah, you basically got what you paid for.
I have very little confidence. I think this actually seems to me like a desperation pickup, just to try and appease the boosters who maybe don't follow these players as closely, to say, hey, look, we brought in another receiver. I know we lost a few last week. Hakeem obviously was a 5-star coming out of high school. With him leaving, I just think it's a desperate move by Mike to say, hey, look, we brought in another guy. This was his high school recruiting profile. But when you think about it, like you said, when it comes to his production in college, over 4 years, there's nothing to get excited about. Less than 1 catch a game the past few years. It's just, I don't get it. I know there's more scholarships now, so you can have a couple extra guys on the roster for depth. I don't even know if I would call him a depth player, and I hope I'm wrong on this. When I saw the news and then it dug in a little bit, I just was not excited about him.
Yeah, not trying to be super down, but this one doesn't make as much sense to me. You've got 1 year left out of him, so it's not like you can develop him, for 2 or 3 years down the road. Like that's kind of what you thought with Jaylen Brown last year, right? If you have him for a few years, he'll really develop into something. This guy's got 1 year left, and if he doesn't make an impact, then it's an interesting take for sure. And it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. Love to be wrong about that. We need some playmakers. I would love to get back on here and eat crow and talk about how great he truly was in Garnet and Gold. Jarvis Boatwright Jr., a defensive back from USC, was there for 1 year, appeared in some games, but didn't really register any stats that I can find publicly. No real metrics anywhere. Nothing that I'm seeing that you're saying like, oh, okay, well that there's that. Committed to Florida State during his official visit on Thursday. Does help out in the secondary a little bit. This is a guy that only having 1 year you can develop. Highly touted. I mean, he's a kid that committed to USC. I don't know how big of an impact he'll make this year. I do think that you could potentially have something going forward here, but Florida State picks up another defensive back, adds to that room.
Yeah, I think it being at his position that you really don't need much right now for Florida State. That's one of the areas where they are somewhat solid in the defensive backfield. But at the same time, bringing him in with multiple years to play, I think that's very helpful. That's a big thing for, when you go into the transfer portal. If you're taking a 1 year guy, you want him to be a proven stud who is going to produce. But you can afford at this position specifically to take a chance on someone. Obviously, he was highly recruited out of high school. That has a lot of really good measurables. So I think he's a good addition. And again, if you have the room and if you were super tight on scholarship, I'm not sure he's someone you take, but we are not there right now. So I think it's a fine take.
Yeah, and I'll correct myself before somebody in the comments did. He didn't register he didn't play in any games last year. I looked ahead too quickly at our next one, and so yeah, don't quote me on that one. I was wrong. He didn't play at all. Redshirted the entire year. Next up, Joshua Raymond, an offensive lineman from Vanderbilt, 6'4", 295 pounds, transferred after one season at Vanderbilt. Visited FSU on Wednesday. He committed on Thursday. Talked about Coach Herb Hand and that being a big reason why he committed and wanted to play for FSU. Can play tackle, which would certainly be a big deal for FSU. He's got a bigger frame and can kind of be on your exterior, which is a big deal. Florida State needs the depth there. Chose Florida State over UCF. And this is a situation where I never have a problem taking more guys at offensive line, especially if they play in the SEC. And I know that Vanderbilt's kind of that team in the SEC. They're not recruiting like most of the rest of the conferences, but I'll always take more offensive linemen, more big-bodied guys that can potentially play tackle. Feels like every offensive lineman that we've taken for the last 3 years has been a guard type frame. This is one that I have no problem with at all. I don't know how big of an impact he'll make this year. I think he'll be a reserve, kind of a depth piece, but you need that. It's hard to go an entire year with 5 offensive linemen, not getting hurt, not getting banged up. I never have a problem with taking offensive line.
Yeah, and if you can get an offensive tackle or someone who has the ability to play offensive tackle in the portal at the Power 5 level, I think you have to take it, given our current situation with how bad the offensive line was last year and how that room looks right now. I think depth is important on the offensive line. I think 2013 was the last year where Florida State didn't suffer a single injury on the offensive line, which is extremely rare for any team in the country. Obviously, that worked out pretty well for Florida State. But at the same time, that we've seen in the past few years, guys go down, even if it's just for 1 week or a season-ending issue. You need guys who can step up and be ready. And, Herb Hand, taking him from his previous stop at UCF, I'll take it just out of pettiness.
And then lastly, Jalen Matthews, another offensive tackle from Rutgers, 6'6", 340-pound freshman from New Jersey, ranked 37th among offensive tackles in his high school class per on 3. Didn't record any stats, but did sign with FSU during his official visit Tuesday, Wednesday timeframe. Has full collegiate eligibility. Transferred as a 2025 class addition. Potential here. Again, I don't think that he plays this year. I think he's a development piece for down the road. But again, I have no problem bringing in big bodied guys that Herb Hand can develop for the future. Obviously, we understand the situations that Florida State has with needing to win this year, or else how much does the future matter? I get that, but if you win enough this year to continue on, you are going to need these guys for the future. And I think one thing that I've kind of learned just in chatting with people, in interacting with different folks, there is a belief in what Herb Hand can do on the offensive line in teaching, and so I like both these offensive line pickups. They're not pickups for this year, and I think that's where we're kind of the most desperate. But if you get through this year, you do have to have something for the future. So I like both these offensive line pickups. I've got no complaints there.
Yeah, anytime you get an offensive line, and from a Power 5 school, which both of these guys were, that's encouraging. And you cannot teach 6'7", 340. You can teach, your footwork. You can teach how to use your hands, but you cannot teach that type of size. So if Hand is able to work with him, and Storms can kind of transform his body into a better 340, or maybe even a 350, whatever it may be, or maybe it's just a much better 330, I don't care. If Hand is able to work with him, then I'm excited about that. Again, I will never get upset about getting an offensive lineman from a Power 5 school.
And Florida State does that twice, right? Both from the SEC and the Big Ten. I know it's Vandy and Rutgers, but still.
We're going to spin this however we can, TJ.
Work with us. Trying to be a little more positive. Here, I'll get negative in a second. Yeah, the thought on Florida State specifically, I think they did a really good job at running back. I think they did a really good job at cornerback in bringing in a couple of additions. I would like to see a little bit more impact guys. I think they've brought in this spring window 2 guys that are impact guys in Sawchuk and Jeremiah Wilson at cornerback. I don't know why that name was escaping me. I think we used to have a GA or like an assistant that was Jeremiah Wilson here, like late years under Jimbo. But anyway, I would like to see more impact guys. I don't know how much juice this staff has just in recruiting in general. I also don't know how much juice the staff has coming off of a 2-10 season or what the effort level is. It's so early in their tenure. With the season that we have ahead of us and how important it is, it's hard for me to be over the moon about development pieces that'll be good in 2 or 3 years. I think there's more of a want or desire to see guys that can come in and make an impact. But all of that said, most of this portal class seems to be wait and see for the future, or most of this window. Sorry, there's a lot of guys in the December window that in December and January that I think will play this year. But we've and we don't have to go through every position again. We've done that, like where we think we need more help. But I'd like them to address a little bit more. Maybe on the defensive line, if they could find, maybe Boatwright is kind of a guy that can play for you in the secondary this year at safety behind Shaheem and Hussey. Yeah, that certainly would be welcomed. But yeah, I'd like to see a little bit more if they can. But I don't know how many true impact guys they're truly in it for at this point as we get into early May. That would, I'm not trying to complain about taking guys, but that would probably be my bigger complaint. The wide receiver take is kind of whatever to me. The offensive line, I don't know how big of an impact they make this year. So it's Sawchuk for me, and it's Jeremiah Wilson, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, no, it's again, it's a wait and see, and there's nothing that I think Florida State could do in the portal at this point that would make me think we're going from 6 to 8 wins or from 7 to 9 or anything like that. It's just, it's scraps at this point. It's extremely unlikely that you have a huge name enter the portal. Keon Coleman was kind of that unicorn. I think he was a May entry to the portal. Obviously, he worked out tremendously, but I don't think we're going to see that this year. And if you do see that, they are not coming to Florida State.
So on that, we'll wrap up portal and we'll move on a little bit. Before we go too far, I will give Garnet and Gold some love. I did a video earlier this week, Richie, reacting to that Gruden video, and all that stuff that he pulled out of that box, you can get at garnetandgold.com. So make sure you are shopping with them. Garnetandgold.com. You can use the code NOSLAW. You won't quite get the deal that Gruden got, but you'll still get a pretty good deal by shopping with Garnet and Gold. We appreciate them for their support. Man, we got some sad news this week, and take a few minutes and chat about Jordan Travis retiring from football. Just recovery didn't go the way that he was hoping. Very tough when you break your leg in a couple of places to get back from that, and just I've seen some people respond and say that they've had similar things, and they were kind of never the same after that, and so that sucks, man. You kind of wanted to see a kid that came here and wasn't even allowed to throw the ball, and turned into one of the best quarterbacks to ever play at FSU. Like to see, what he could potentially do at the next level. I don't know that I had, Pat Mahomes type aspirations for him when he came out of college, but you just never know. Right. And so I think it would have been cool to see what he could do in some NFL situations. It kind of sucks that we'll never see that, but I will talk more about like where, his place and other aspects of this, but it was sucky to see Jordan, have to hang it up, unfortunately, just due to the medical stuff.
Yeah, and I have no idea, or no doubt that he is going to be successful in whatever he does. Just looking at his resilience factor coming out of high school, he wanted to come to Florida State, but Jimbo was recruiting elite quarterbacks at the time, and they were saying yes, so there just wasn't a spot. So he goes to Louisville, has a horrible experience, absolutely horrible experience there, and decides the portal wasn't a thing at the time, but says he wanted to transfer. And Willie Taggart at the time was desperate for any quarterback that would say yes. So obviously here's a potential fan favorite, right? His brother Devin was a phenomenal baseball player at Florida State, went on to play for the Blue Jays. So he's like, all right, I'll bring this kid in. And as TJ said, he was horrible his first year here. When he threw the football in practice, it looked like there was a 80-mile-an-hour wind gust coming back at him to where the ball would just hang up there and he just couldn't do anything. And then to see the development he made throughout his career, I remember, I think the moment he truly arrived was in that LSU game in the Superdome when he just, lit things up. And it was just so amazing seeing the progress. I can't think of another quarterback, maybe Christian Ponder, who was so bad to start. I guess you could somewhat make an argument for Charlie, but became a truly all-time great at Florida State. And it wasn't just the growth he made in his performance, but his teammates all loved him. Like he was best friends probably with half that team. And, it sucks that it didn't work out because I would have loved to see him in the NFL to see it. I think his game would have actually translated to today's NFL if he was in the right situation with the right offensive coordinator and the right scheme. I think he truly could have had a 7 to 10 year career in the NFL. And kudos to him for saying, "Listen, I'm not going to." There's more important things in life than just football. We see these guys that deal with injury after injury after injury, and they just won't give it up. He's clearly at peace at this point in his life, where football is not his identity. And I'm sure he'll still stay in football, whether it's coaching, whether it's broadcasting, doing something along those lines. But yeah, it sucked to see that because I was really looking forward to seeing him and how his game translated to the NFL.
Yeah. Where does he rank? Do you all-time QBs at FSU? Like, where do you have him on your list?
That's a really tough one. He's definitely top 10. And what sucks is the caveat that if he had not got hurt against North Alabama, and I still don't think we would have gotten to the playoff even if undefeated, because there were obviously ulterior motives there. But if we did, and he had won a national title, I'd put him probably at number 3. I'd bump him right above Chris Winkie.
So I think I have him number 4.
Okay.
Maybe that's really prisoner of the moment, but like when I think about like him versus EJ, like I mean, who is your, if it's not Jordan? I mean, I think the top 3 are kind of settled. And if somebody wants to make an argument for like Jordan over Winkie, like I'm fine with that, but like that's fine. Like I think most people would have 3 national title winners and 3 Heismans at the top of their list, right? Somebody wants to throw another one in there, that's fine. I think the large majority of FSU fans would have maybe different orders, but the same top 3, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I think that kind of settles it. I don't know, like, who do you have next? Like, you talked about Ponder. Ponder went, first round. EJ was first round.
EJ should not have been first round, and I love EJ.
I agree with that. But
that was comical.
Teams overdraft. But I'm thinking like guys who won a lot of games at FSU. Obviously, they're guys back in the '90s and even before that. But I don't.
I think Peter Tom Willis is up there.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I think about guys that you know. I mean, he had back-to-back 10+ win seasons.
yeah.
You know, and we obviously we won with freaking Tate and Brock. Like he obviously would have gotten to 13-0 himself, and maybe 14-0 after being left out of the playoff too. But I have I mean, I think four. I think four is fair. And I try not to be a prisoner of the moment with that, but I just think about like in watching his development too, and the way that he was able to lead and really be the difference maker. Like it's not like he was just, there was a question posed, what happens if Jameis goes to Alabama? And then, it made me think about Coker, and Coker won that Alabama title with like a ton of monsters around him. Jordan wasn't that. Like he wasn't just a game manager that had a bunch of talent. Like he was making the difference so many times. You think back to those plays against Florida in 2022, and you think about some of the rabbits that Jordan was able to pull out of his hat at times. The North Carolina games that he basically won by himself, and I mean, I think he accounted for every single yard. When we were 0-4, I think he accounted for every single yard on that Syracuse drive in 2021 that got Florida State its first win of the year. I mean, I think I'd have him 4. And I'll tell you this, I'm younger, so I never watched Charlie live, and my memories of Winky, I remember some of the big games. I don't remember every game of Winky like I remember every game of Jordan. He's probably my second favorite. I wouldn't have him number 2. Like I don't think he's the second best, but he's probably my second favorite quarterback that ever played for Florida State. And I loved EJ. I loved Ponder. Shoot, I mean, people don't like him, but I liked Weatherford. I liked Ricks. Like I liked all those guys. He probably has moved ahead of Winky. If he's not number 2 for me, he's number 3. And that's not a shot at Charlie. I just never watched Charlie, right? Like I know Charlie was better. But Jordan might be my second favorite quarterback to ever play here.
Yeah, he's definitely up there because, again, he's someone who in that Notre Dame game in 2021, I don't think fans were booing at him exactly, but it could have been interpreted that way. And, he was ready to give up the sport. And then obviously Mackenzie Melton didn't work out. And then Travis comes back and all of a sudden like, oh, my goodness, we might have a quarterback here. And then you go to the next year, 2022, and we start the season strong. Then we have those 3 straight losses, but then he wins the final 6 games and beats Oklahoma in the Cheez-It Bowl. And then he was the catapult to us going 13-0. He was just phenomenal at Florida State. When you look at the progress he made, this is a kid that, a lot of people know this. If you listen to this show, if you're a casual fan, you probably don't know. He strongly considered giving up football during his time at Florida State because he said that this just isn't for me. And he considered changing positions at one time as well. He said, I'll play wide receiver if I have to. And, Mike Norvell and Tony Tokars, to their credit, they said, no, you're a quarterback. And look what he turned into. Yeah, he's definitely, top 10 easy. I would say top 5 for sure, especially in my lifetime. If Winky didn't have the Heisman and national title, I think I'd have Jordan at number 3. But those things do matter. And for that reason, I think number 4 is appropriate.
Yeah. I've seen some people talking about retiring his jersey. Do you have thoughts on that? I have a take on that, and I've been really positive about this first part. I do have a take on it, but I'll let you give yours first if you have any thoughts there.
I don't think it's as bad of an idea as retiring Shedeur Sanders' jersey at Colorado. However, when you think of Florida State folklore, I don't think his jersey should be retired, at least not in the immediate future. Maybe, 10, 20 years down the line, you look back and say, yeah, what he did was actually phenomenal. And that could be a discussion, but that's not even in consideration for me at this point.
Yeah, I love Jordan. And I just admitted that he's probably my second favorite quarterback ever to play at Florida State. I think I'm a hard no on this. I think that certainly nothing anytime soon. Like it took 10 years for them to do anything for Jameis. In fact, they didn't even retire Jameis's jersey. They let Deuce freaking Spann wear that thing. And so, first of all, we don't even retire jerseys. Yeah. Second of all, like immortalizing a guy or putting them into the Ring of Honor or doing something like that. maybe that. Certainly no on retiring jerseys. Like I'm good never retiring another jersey ever. If we're not going to retire number 5 or number 9, we don't ever need to retire another jersey again. And eventually you run out of numbers, right? You can't do it for everybody. So, but it took 10 years for us to do that for Jameis. I don't think we should have that discussion with Jordan or anyone else until at least that long. And then I think you have to look at like, okay, well, what was won? What is the standard? Yes, the way things finished were incredibly tragic and still kind of break your heart today. But that doesn't mean that you change up what you've done for 40 years because of a freak injury or something like that. So I'm a hard no on Jersey. If they want to kind of immortalize him like they have, where they, retire the, I don't even know what they call that now, where they retire the player, I guess. I don't know. What do you call that? Like what they did for
retire the jersey, but they don't retire the number.
Yeah, they retire the jersey, but so like, I don't know. Like I guess I'm okay with
retired. Dion,
Brooks,
Charlie,
Ricky,
Charlie, but Jalen got to wear it, but that was only because of Charlie's blessings.
Yeah, it's mostly old stuff. Yeah. I don't know. Like in 10 years or so, that'd be fine, I suppose. But nothing. I'm not retiring any numbers or anything like that. Like I don't. And I'm even kind of lukewarm on doing anything in general. I think mostly that's retired for just absolute legends. And so you win a Heisman, you become an All-American, things like that. I think it's a little bit different. So I don't know. Not trying to be negative on the take, but I still love Jordan, even by
love what Jordan did for us. Absolutely.
All right, last thing
where we would be now if we didn't have Jordan Travis.
Say that again.
Who knows where this program would be right now if we never had Jordan Travis?
Oh, we'd probably have a new coach. So maybe in a better spot. Yeah. Now that you say that, less good memories, but I don't know, maybe a discussion for a different time. Keeping it somewhat positive. All right, talking about some of those legends. I saw this on Twitter this week, and I thought it was kind of interesting. So we'll talk through it just a little bit, and then we'll get out of here and watch some baseball. But about Mount Rushmore, right? If you had to build a Florida State Mount Rushmore, let's build a couple. Let's build a football one and then a non-football one. You can start us off. We'll go one at a time. Who's your, if you're started off, like who's your George Washington? Who's your first pick on an FSU football Mount Rushmore?
So I didn't do my list based on rankings, but my obvious number 1 is Bobby.
Yeah. All right. Well, I agree there. We're both on the same. Our number 1 is the same.
All right. So my number 2 is Charlie. Just delivering the first national title for Florida State, being the first Heisman Trophy winner for Florida State. I just think that, in what he does in the community, I know that some people don't really care too much about that. He's just an amazing human being. I've had the chance to meet him several times. By no means are we friends. Do we talk on the phone? But he truly is an amazing human being. And I think he is a face of our program.
So I had Charlie in there too. I don't really care the order, but Bobby was certainly my number 1. Yeah. I have Jameis on it. I think that's pretty straightforward. You go 26-1. Never lose to a rival, never lose in Doak Campbell Stadium, go to the championship one year, the playoff the next year, win a Heisman, win a Natty, go undefeated against the SEC, right? Go undefeated against the ACC, all the comebacks, everything, get to throw in the fact that he was a pretty elite baseball player too at Florida State. I know this is a football only one, but I think it's hard to not have Jameis on this thing.
So this is where it gets contentious because I left Jameis off.
Really?
I did. So my next one is Derek Brooks.
Okay.
I think he's, again, a face of the emergence of the dynasty of Florida State, that where we are right now today, you cannot tell that story without telling the story about Derek Brooks and what he contributed to Florida State. Let alone the fact that he went on to the Super Bowl, had a pick 6 for the Bucks, and is a Super Bowl champion. And everything he does, again, just an outstanding, upstanding human being. So he was my third one.
So here's my problem with Brooks, and I love Brooks as obviously living in Tampa. Not only that, defensive player of the year in 2002 as well. I think Shade Tree was better. Like I don't think you can be the second best player in a position and make that would be a little weird to me. So that's where I'll fight you on Brooks a little bit. But mean, I like Brooks more than I mean, I don't have anything against Shade Tree. I just being a Buccaneers guy. All right. So then I had Charlie as well. Like, I agree with that one. I really struggle with number 4. Number 4 was really hard for me. And I don't know which way to go, but I'm like split between Winky and Warwick. Like, I think Peter Warwick was the better player. It's just hard for me to not give it to a guy with a Heisman and that is a quarterback of a national championship team. So I guess my 4 are Bobby and the 3 Heisman winners. I would listen to an argument for Peter Warwick for sure. He might be the best, between him and Deion, the best athlete to ever play at FSU. Certainly in my lifetime, I think he was the best athlete to ever play at FSU. And so I would hear an argument for Warwick, but I think I just keep it really simple and go Bobby and the 3 Heisman winners.
So this is where I'm going to upset some people. So I have Bobby, Charlie, Derek Brooks, and Florida State is a massive brand. And whether you want to admit it or not, one of the best players to ever play at Florida State helped build that brand, and that is Deion Sanders. He is on my Mount Rushmore.
So here's the question then. You picked 2 guys because of what they do in the community and like loving Florida State and stuff. And then you picked one guy that hates Florida State more than anybody else that ever played for them. So it feels unbalanced. Or maybe you just need both sides of the equation.
And it may, and that's fine. But I just think Deion, how many of the guys that came behind him after his 87 class wanted to go play for Florida State because they saw that similar rap video in Deion and what he was doing on the field. And when he literally called his shot against Clemson for that punt return touchdown, what he went on to do in the NFL. I know what recent memory is not great with Deion, but you could never have a Florida State documentary without involving Deion Sanders. And he's come back to Florida State more than people realize. He's just a busy guy. I know not recently because he's been a head coach in college for the past, 4 years. But yeah, I think as much as I may not like him on a personal level, just based on what I know, obviously I don't know him personally, I just think he belongs. I truly do.
So, all right. So we've got 6 on here and we've got to whittle this down to 4. So we agree on Charlie and Bobby. So that's easy.
Yeah.
So we got to figure out a way. I think what's probably the easiest is for us to both get one of our picks, and eliminate one of our picks. So let's do it like this. We didn't really talk about this being the way we do it, but I think it's probably the most fair. You can eliminate one of mine and I'll eliminate one of yours.
So
that's how we'll come up with 4.
Unpicked. Remind me your 2 unpicked.
Jameis and Winky.
Winky, he's out.
All right. I am. Oof.
So it's Derek Brooks or Deion.
Dude, I hate this. I hate this. And I hate what I'm about to do. I love Derek Brooks, but I can't. I got to take him off. Because, I think it would be. I don't think. Kind of for the reasons you mentioned. I like Derek more. I like Derek more as a person. I like him more because he played for the Bucs. I like that he won a national title and got drafted to my hometown team. If you're making a Florida State like an all-time, I think that Deion is a little bit more important to that. I also think that he was Deion was a better player than Brooks was. I also throw in the point about Shade Tree. If you'd have put Shade Tree on there, I'd just kept him and gotten rid of Deion. But
how about this? We can do an audible. A lot of people don't know this. Shade Tree finished either 4th or 5th in the Heisman voting as a linebacker. That is insanity. Why don't we bump Deion and throw Shade Tree up there?
I mean, I'm okay with that. I still think Deion is like I'm good with the Deion pick. I know people hate him now, but I don't think that's too crazy. I don't think you're too crazy with Deion. I do think if you asked Bobby to do 4, he'd put Deion in it.
You would say Deion is the most influential player in Florida State history. I would not argue with you. In terms of brand and what he did for the school, his charisma.
At that time, making it cool to come to Florida State.
Is he a jerk? Yes, we know that. We've heard the stories. But at the same time, what he did for Florida State is undeniable.
I think if you were doing it based on that, like 4 players only, it would be Deion, Charlie, Peter Warwick, and Jameis. I think if you did it for the 4 most iconic players to ever play at Florida State, I think it would be those 4.
Yeah.
Like that the guys that like made the brand the brand. Because Jameis certainly did it for this new generation, So yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with that. But yeah, all right. So I'm good. But let's keep we'll keep Dion on it. So Bobby, Charlie, Jameis, and Dion.
I'm good with that.
It's not terrible. All right, let's do a non-football one real quick. I'll start this one. It's got to be 11. Like it's got to be Mike Martin on it. I understand everyone's, but like the record holder for most wins. Just truly one of the greatest baseball coaches ever. All of the legends that have come through FSU. I've got 11 on mine.
So again, I didn't rank these, but he was the first person to come to mind. So,
yeah, like I just don't think you can even do it. If you don't put 11 on yours, I don't really know. Like, what's even the point?
Yeah, we are in total agreement there. Again, mine's aren't necessarily ranked, but he would be number one. Like if we're in Olympic sports.
Who is your number two?
Dave Cowens.
Okay.
NBA Rookie of the Year, NBA MVP, Basketball Hall of Famer, NBA player, NBA coach, WNBA coach. In a lot of the younger people that are listening probably are thinking to themselves, who the heck is this guy? Look him up. His credentials speak for themselves. And I was not going to leave a basketball person off here. I really wanted to put Ham, especially since he just retired, but I could not put Ham over an NBA Hall of Famer.
Here's one for you. I bet this is not on yours. Maybe. But I'm going to guess no. I'm going to put Bob Brayman on it. I think winning back-to-back-to-back national titles, I understand it's track. I understand not a lot of people maybe get into that or, even realize that Florida State won 3 straight national titles in track. If you win a national title in a sport, it automatically starts to put you in my mind that I should put you on this list. If you win 3 in a row, that's insane. So maybe half the people that'll watch this don't even know who Bob Brayman is. Back-to-back-to-back national championships in track. He's a Florida State legend. So yeah, he's on mine.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, when it comes to a track national title, it's combined points between high jump, long jump, triple jump, the 100-yard or 100-meter, whatever it is. So many different events. It's an impressive feat, and I'm a little surprised I didn't think about him. But my next one, in this one, could certainly be contested, and I would not blame anybody, but I had to put a golfer on there, and I was down to Paul Azinger, who was a Ryder Cup captain, but I still had to go with Brooks. 5-time major champ. Younger generation can appreciate him. So yeah, Brooks Koepka. I had to get a golfer on there.
I'll go softball here. I'll go Jesse Warren. I think that I like the Brooks pick. The only thing I don't like is most of the reason he's on there is post FSU. Not that he wasn't great at FSU, but I tried to avoid that because otherwise I'd have just. He was
pretty good at FSU.
He was for sure. But like you just mentioned, 5-time major, but Jesse Warren, the one national title we have, I don't know if we have it. If not for her,
that double play,
still holds so many records. They still show that highlight of that double play that she had against Washington in Game 1 of the Women's College World Series final series. I'm a softball, kind of softy at heart anyway, and really love that program that Coach Almeida has built. And you could probably throw Coach Almeida on something pretty close to this, but I tried to go with a couple of players and not just 4 coaches. So Jesse Warren was my pick for number 3.
Yeah, and I wanted to. Yeah, I remember my wife doesn't watch college sports, but I remember, very vividly, we were sitting on that game or sitting on the couch watching that game when she made that play, and even my wife started to scream oh my goodness, what just happened? Because she played softball growing up, and that play is iconic, not just in Florida State history, but in all of college World Series history when it comes to the women's. You will not see a promo for the Women's College World Series without seeing that play on it, because what she did, the anticipation to get up to make that throw, amazing. She was definitely on my short list. I'll say that much.
Number 3 for you.
Number 4.
Oh, have you already done 3?
Yeah, I did. We both did 11. I did Dave Cowens, and then I did Brooks.
What's number 4 for you?
So this one is a name that a lot of people probably won't know, but I appreciate what she did for Florida State soccer program so much. Mami Yamaguchi. She basically won the equivalent of the Heisman when it comes to women's soccer. She was phenomenal. Nobody would debate that she was by far the best college player in the country, and it wasn't even close. I think the voting was ridiculously when it comes to the margin of victory. I remember seeing her play a few times and thinking, oh my goodness, how did Florida State get this woman here? We've always done a good job recruiting internationally, but I had to throw her on there just because I just seeing her play in person and her ability, she was clearly by far better than anybody. And this was against good teams. So that's my number 4.
So it's funny that you mentioned her. I would have put Jalen Howell up there, who won the Herman Trophy twice in back-to-back years and won 2 national titles as well under Coach K. But I didn't go with her. I went with Buster. I feel like it's fair. Really hard to leave Buster Posey off of a list like this. I think you knew when he was coming out of college that he was going to be a Hall of Famer. And I understand there's other guys like J.D. Drew. Like, I understand there's other guys too. But Buster was so iconic. And I'm probably letting some of his, pro career, factor into my mind on this. But just the fact that he was such a day one guy, playing the hardest position, being so good behind the plate and at the plate. Buster Posey's my number 4. Jalen Howell, though, she was my number 5. Like, she was my honorable mention number 5 because of just that. Back-to-back Herman trophies and 2 national titles. And, another year they finished national runner-up. They were an elite team altogether. She was on another level when she was here just a few years ago.
So I'm in agreement with Buster, but just out of curiosity, how close was it between him and J.D. Drew?
I mean, JD was before me a little bit. I mean, he was around a little bit. So, like, I remember Buster a little bit more. JD was way up there. But I think Buster was more of like I think people knew when he was leaving college that he was about to be a Hall of Famer. Like, he was just that good behind the plate and at the plate. So, to me, he was – I won't say it wasn't close, but, like, I mean, Buster, I didn't really feel like – JD probably would have been, like, in my top 10, where Buster was obviously my top 4.
Okay.
So if I had another baseball, like if there'd have been a baseball only, JD would have certainly been on it. Like it would have been 11, Buster, JD, and I don't know, like who was the general manager for all those years that was here? Older guy.
Chip Baker?
No. I don't know why I'm not thinking of his name. No,
I almost, if I was going baseball, Buster, I think is the clear answer. But man, I'm still amazed by Marshall McDougal's 6 home run game. That's just still nuts to think about.
He almost deserves to be on it just for that. I mean, Dick Hauser would be way up there. I mean, I guess I could have cheated and put Jameis on both lists. But yeah, I don't know why I'm not thinking of the name, but I'll say it on the next one. But all right, there's our Mount Rushmores. What do you got before we get out of here? I will say it was really hard because I wanted to put Lonnie on here. I wanted to put. I know that he didn't leave in the best way possible. I wanted to put Coach K on here. I mean, still 2 titles is ridiculous in the program that he built. I thought about Coach Sue, but it was a hard list to make. Jesse and Bob winning titles was a big deal. 11 just being who he is, and then if I'd had a fun one, I'd have thrown Gene somewhere in here too.
I think this exercise shows us how lucky we are as Florida State fans that this was such a difficult exercise. Because if, to your point earlier, if Vanderbilt or Rutgers podcast had to do this exercise, it'd be much harder, but in a different direction. Because who the heck do we put on here? We're thinking, who the heck do we leave off?
Yeah, you feel like you're always leaving somebody pretty big. I mean, we left off a 2-time national champion in Krikorian. We left off Lonnie, who's been, outside of Oklahoma, maybe the best softball program over the last 10 years. This is a tough exercise for sure. You got any shout outs or anything before we get out of here, Richie?
Yeah, real quick. Went to church this morning. Shout out my pastor David. Today was his 20th anniversary of being the pastor of our church, which you don't hear about very often. So definitely shout out to him.
Cool. Baseball needs to pick up a game 3 win against Clemson. Shout out the softball team for winning the ACC title and run ruling Virginia Tech, a top 15 team yesterday on the road. They can go for the sweep today. I think it's on, ACC Network or ESPN2 or something. So check them out later today at 4. Jazzy Francic with a a six inning no hitter. I wish they'd have gone to the 7th inning just so that we could have seen another inning of her mowing down one of the best offenses in the country.
Yeah.
But good stuff for the softball team winning the ACC, and baseball, if they can pick up a win today, picks up a huge series win against Clemson. We will see. It's game 3, so hold your breath. TJ Pinger, Richie Barnes. We will talk to you guys next week. We'll see what the schedule looks like next week for Mother's Day. I guess 1 probably works, but we'll talk about that later, and we'll let you guys know when we'll be live. We appreciate you for tuning in. Go Noles.
Go Noles.